Good morning. Today is Friday, May 16th, 2025. The main purpose for my trip to Israel last week is that I was invited to teach a week-long course at Bar Ilan Law School on the subject of Talmudic law, the subject that I teach here at McGill Law School. And I want to thank McGill Faculty of Law for making the trip possible for me. It was the fulfillment of a long-held dream of mine to be able to teach law in Israel, especially at such a fraught time. Now, in my McGill course here in Montreal, I emphasize, and I've shared this with you before, I emphasize that law is not only about the consequences of our actions, what happens if a person does something illegal, but it is also the creation of values and expectations. And inevitably, in every society, there are gaps between the values that society holds and how it acts in real life. Here in Canada, for example, there is a gap between what should a punishment achieve. The value that Canada espouses is that a punishment should be restorative. It should give rehabilitation. The reality is often not like that. There's a value in how to treat criminals with dignity and humanity. That's not always the way that it's practiced. How do judges and society at large maintain their humanity when dealing with pure evil? Those are difficult questions. And there are gaps between the values we hold and what happens in real life, and that's true everywhere. It's true everywhere. And these subjects are certainly of interest to my McGill students. But for many of my Bar Ilan students, these have been actual life and death scenarios. And with all that these young people are going through, they want to study law. They want to know what the law says, and they want to grapple with, they want to wrestle with how to apply it in their real lives. And their real lives is often completely outside of our experience. And we had some very tough discussions, very hard questions that we grappled with, that we wrestled with. And I found the students were amazing. They were intelligent, they were curious. There were many respectful disagreements, but strongly held because they are living this. And for that reason, the opportunity to teach law to them was so profound for me. The students that I had are wonderful. And the experience for me was amazing. So, for example, we talked about punishments in Jewish law and the requirement in Jewish law to treat criminals with dignity. We talked about the rules that ensured that the Sanhedrin, that the Jewish court that would impose even capital punishment or corporal punishment, that the Sanhedrin, those judges were not allowed to lose their humanity. And we had very challenging discussions, for example, about how to treat terrorists in Israel today. Because this is something that they're coming up against. That All of the students that I met either served in Sahel, are serving in Sahel, or will be in the reserves. And they see this firsthand. I use the example of medical treatment. Israel has a value. We've discussed this before. It's an amazing thing that within the medical world, there is an obligation to treat every person who is injured, regardless of who they are. And the normal procedure in Israel is that hospitals, doctors, nurses, technicians treat the victims of a terrorist attack and the perpetrators of a terrorist attack, sometimes even in the same hospital. And it's a code of ethics of the medical profession, and it is a value that Israel proudly upholds. But students grapple with that. Is that really the way it should be? If you've come face to face with a terrorist, if you have been injured by a terrorist, or your friend has been killed by a terrorist, do you want the establishment to treat that murderer, that terrorist, the same as they're going to treat you or your friend? It's hard because it's not hypothetical. It's real. It's happening. We talked about prison as a punishment for crimes. And I talked about Jewish law's idea that in general, prison is not a preferred punishment. And there are all sorts of reasons why Jewish law does not make use of prison as a normal punishment, as opposed to how it is here in Canada, in the US, in Israel. And we talked about the fact that the fact that so many terrorists are in prison in Israel is actually part of the incentive to capture Israelis in order to get their prisoners back, in order for Hamas and other terrorists to get their prisoners back. And so we talked about capital punishment. And I spoke about capital punishment from the point of view of Jewish law. And we talked about capital punishment in terms of Israeli law. And you know that Israeli law, kind of similar to Jewish law, there is capital punishment in Israel, but it's actually only been imposed one time in Israel's history. And so I said to them, so why is there no capital punishment in Israel? It would remove this class of people that are now an incentive for terrorists to capture more Israelis. Why isn't there capital punishment? And a lot of the students said there should be. So I just pointed out, but Israel's been around a long time. And it never changed its rules. It doesn't use capital punishment, even for terrorists. Why not? It's a good question. I don't have an answer. And I said to them, if you think it should be different, you're the ones to make the change. I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm just saying, if you want to change, you're the ones to do it. We had wonderful debates because there were hard questions. And because they're living this. And I was challenging them with Jewish law, which was in its values and its practice often at variance with how they feel in the moment of being in battle, of being face to face with the terrorists, of being shot at or shooting at, or protecting, etc. And I was challenging them. After that particular class, a student approached me. And she said to me, I want to tell you something. Many of us disagree with you. But we are so grateful that you shared your opinion with us, that you challenged us in our thinking. And that you did so, that I did so, and I said this very explicitly, from a position of complete support for Tzahal, complete support for Medinat Yisrael, and complete support for Zionism. And I said to them, I'm not telling you what's right or wrong. I'm just asking you to think about what these classic Jewish sources say, and to think about what it would mean to apply them. Maybe you will, maybe you won't. But this woman who approached me on behalf of the class, she said to me, it means so much to us that you came to share this with us. I said, I'm going to start crying. But unlike students at McGill and most places, these young men and women are going through unimaginable challenges in their own lives. So another professor told me this story. Another professor, Ilan. He told me one day he received a call from a woman. The woman says, I'm the mother-in-law of your student so-and-so. I just have to tell you that your student was in Miluim. He was on reserve duty. And yesterday, he had to identify the body of his closest friend who had been killed. Now, the professor says to me, how is this person supposed to come to class and concentrate on contract law? How is that possible? But that's the remarkable thing. He did, and they do. And they grapple with these legal issues after being in combat, after seeing firsthand the brutality of terrorists, and knowing they're going back to it, and they want to study law. What a privilege to help students grapple with these issues. I had the opportunity several times to meet students in small groups, to be able to get to know them better, to ask them questions. And I asked them all kinds of questions. Most of my students were young women. And most of them were officers actually, and I asked them about Tzahal, about serving in the army. I asked them about women in the army. How are they treated? What could be changed? What needs to change? I asked, did they have confidence in the IDF after October 7th, the failures of October 7th? It was very interesting. What several of them told me is they have complete confidence in their fellow soldiers. They do not have such confidence in their leadership, in the people that are making the decisions. It's interesting. And even more incredible than this is that some of my students were serving in reserves during the time of the class. So Bar-Ilan and other universities, I assume, had to come up with policies so that people who were in college, in university, and now we're talking about upper class law students, that they'd be able to do their degrees and finish and be interrupted by army service. So Bar-Ilan and other universities came up with accommodations. All classes are recorded. And so if you're on Miluim, you don't have to attend class, because who knows where you are. But you have to watch the recordings of the classes, And there's an assignment at the end. You have to write a short essay at the end of the class. There's an assignment. Of course, you get an extension in time because it could be that you're serving for 3 months in Gaza. Some people serve reserve duty. Reserve duty is very different. One person could be serving reserve duty sitting behind a desk somewhere. Okay, so to turn on a YouTube for 3 hours, okay, I'm not saying it's the most interesting thing in the world. Hopefully my classes are, but some people are in battle in Gaza. They don't have 3 hours to watch a YouTube about Michael Whitman talking about Israeli law and Jewish law. So of course they make accommodations. They give them extensions. Okay. But it's incredible. Why do they do it? How do they do it? Why do they do it? So I asked. One of my students, a young woman, she's serving in the reserves during the time of my class, and I arranged to have a Zoom meeting with her. She's an officer in the Golani Brigade, and she at the time that I spoke to her, which was a few days ago, she was serving on the Syrian border. So I had a Zoom call with her from the Syrian border. She told me it's the 4th time she is serving in the reserves. She finished her army service and she's gone back now 4 times. So I said to her, but you're in law school. You want to be a lawyer. You want to finish school. Why do you keep going back to serve? I mean, why don't you finish school first? And she said to me, we have a war. And we have to do it. Because if we don't do it, who's going to do it? If I don't do it, who's going to do it? And I said to her, and I said to all of those students who are on Miluim in this kind of situation, I said to them, whatever I can do to help you, I'll do it. If you would like a one-on-one class 3 months from now on Zoom, I'll do it. You want to take 6 months to write the essay, that's fine, I'll grade it. Whatever extension, whatever accommodation the university will give you, I will help you in any way that's humanly possible for you to be able to succeed at law school and not have to sacrifice because of what you're doing for your country serving in Sahel. And then I said this to this young woman, and I said this to every single student. I said that in our shul at ADATH, here in Montreal, every single day, we say the prayer for Israeli soldiers. And I said to them, I am saying the prayer for you, my daughter, my son. Not for somebody else. It's not a question of sympathy or empathy. These are my children. These are our children. These are our grandchildren. And that's who we're saying the prayer for. This young woman was very appreciative. She said to me, "Lo muvan me'elav." It's not all professors are like this. Okay, I'm not taking any credit for myself. Lo muvan me'elav, but that's the way it is. These are my children, my sons, my daughters, my sisters and brothers, my grandchildren. And I'm praying for them every day. And I said to this young woman, and I said to all the students, you are the tikvah of Israel. You're the hope of Israel. You are the leaders of Israel now. What this country will be, you will decide. And I said to them, you inspire me. I want to finish with a quote that I think is so important, so amazing, and it really sums up a lot of my trip. It was written by Yuval Levin, an Israeli writer, and he makes a distinction between optimism and hope. He writes, to be hopeful about Israel is not to be optimistic about it. Optimism, the expectation that good things will happen, is a pretty silly attitude toward our fallen world. To be an optimist, especially in Israel, to assume good things are going to happen, you got to be a little crazy to feel like that. Assuming that all will be well is not so different from assuming we are doomed. That's also silly, to assume that it's all going to go bad, to be a pessimist. Optimism and pessimism are both dangerous vices because they are both invitations to passivity. I'm an optimist. I think it's going to be good, so I don't have to do anything about it. I'm a pessimist. I think it's going to be bad, so there's nothing I can do about it. Hope is a virtue, and so it sits between those vices. Hope tells us that things could go well and invites us to take action that might help make that happen and might make us worthy of it happening. Hope does not deny the obvious potential for calamity that always casts a shadow over our future, but it holds out the possibility of light and grace. This is what I found in Israel. There are people who are optimists. There are people who are pessimists, but they're in the minority. And that really is a silly position. What I found, especially among the young students that I met, is hope. There's a recognition that bad things have happened, and God forbid bad things could happen. But there's an understanding, and I express this to them, that you are the ones to do something about it. My students at Bar Ilan and hundreds of thousands of other young people across Israel, they are the tikvah of Israel. They are the hope of Israel. And they are the tikvah of Am Yisrael, the Jewish people. They will make it happen. And after meeting them, I'm filled with confidence in the superb job they will do. My friends, I wish you a great day and a beautiful Shabbos. And I look forward to seeing you soon in person.